The Ohio State Buckeyes, they came, they saw, they took down the number 3 team in college football on the road for one of the best victories of the season and very much put everybody back on the program. That is the Buckeyes looking like a contender for the national championship once again. What's up, Kim folks? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. Thank you for watching the #1 college football show wherever you are. If you're not a subscriber to the channel, think about it. Give us a thought. We have a good time. We upload segments all the time, and we do these live shows whenever we think that they're worth doing. And I thought the end of Ohio State, Penn State, in one of the biggest games of the season, heading into Tuesday's reveal of the Selection Committee's college football playoff rankings, is a great place to start. But this game, I really thought, didn't really go as well as we had hoped it might from a back and forth standpoint, but from play on the field, we'd seen some things in this game that we had never seen, well, in back-to-back circumstances, particularly like the first half. We had Will Howard fumble the football on the way to what is going to look like a back-breaking rushing touchdown, and it's a touchback to Penn State. They can't do much with that. We see Davison Igbinosun, who is the most penalized defender at Ohio State, get called on a holding call. On the very next play, a play that looks like it's going to go for a TD, snatches out of the hands of the wide receiver to get the touchback for Ohio State. I got to see this defense make plays when it absolutely had to make plays, and that bend, don't break, we're not going to give up explosive play mentality that Jim Knowles' 4-2-5 is famous for, was really on display today. Like, I'm looking at the stats for Drew Aller. 12 of 20, 146 yards, a pick, 2 sacks, right? Tyler Warren does what he does. Three rushes for 47 yards, and then 4 catches for 47 yards. You know that this man is going to touch the football. They got him in Wildcat. They got him blocking. They got him out in patterns. At one point, I'm going, all right, just take Drew out and let Tyler be the quarterback, because that feels like what you want to do anyway, Andy Kotelnicki. And as much as I really enjoy Kotelnicki's offense, this game felt like one where they were just being a little too cute sometimes. And when they weren't being cute, they were handing the ball to Katron Allen or Nick Singleton, but in plays for which Ohio State was going to drop 8 into the box, and they're going to tackle in the open field. What you needed to do, and what I just did not get to see, was throwing the football downfield, man. Like, you got to take shots. You got to find Trey Wallace deep downfield. You have to make these Ohio State's defenders, the secondary in particular, back off of you and let Drew Aller do what he does well. Everybody has said that guy does well since high school. He throws a really great deep ball, and I didn't see any of that in Andy Kotelnicki's offensive game plan. And this is a dude that was brought in expressly to get the ball to the playmakers at Penn State and to create explosive plays. That is what James Franklin wanted. I think you wanted this offense to resemble something like 2021 Pittsburgh with Kenny Pickett and Jordan Addison, where if you got to feed the ball to Tyler Warren 17 times for over 200 yards to win the football game, that's what you're going to do. That's what they get against USC. I kept asking, when are you going to make 44 the guy that is either going to win this game or lose it for you? And when they went for it, looking to go for a score that probably ties the ball game late, and you get that 4th down stop, Lathan Ransom does a great job beating Tyler Warren to the spot. Drew Aller didn't have anywhere else to go, man. And in a game where it felt like all the momentum was on Penn State's side, they're at Beaver Stadium. They have 111,000 people in there to see them catch this L from Ohio State. And yet and still, James Franklin can't get the big game won. He falls to an abysmal 1-10 against Ohio State, and he's something like 1-14 against top 5 programs. And really, this has been the bane of Ryan Day's existence too. He's 500 in these top 5 games, 8-8. Now he's 9-8 with a really great win, a gritty win, the kind of win I think many Ohio State fans will take. Was it perfect? No, but you did what you needed to do, and you learned some things, right? You learned that good Will Howard and bad Will Howard will show up in the same day. The same guy that will throw a pick 6 where you're going, oh, baby, no, what you looking at is a guy that will roll to his left, throw back to his right, and find a receiver downfield. I saw this Ohio State team go down 10-0 to Penn State. I saw Penn State give up 14 unanswered with stupid penalties and stupid plays. We got unsportsmanlike conduct plays, right? We got encroachment from your best defender in Abdul Carter. You are giving the Ohio State Buckeyes a cookie. And if you give the Buckeyes a cookie, they're going to rob your house blind. That's just how that works, okay? They're going to take you for everything you got if you let them in the door. And we saw this. Like, this is a game that Oregon found a way to win in very much the same fashion that Ohio State would have found a way to win had it been them. Penn State could have found a way to win and prove to us that they're one of the 4 best teams in college football, but they were a soft number 3 as it was. They will not be number 3 on Sunday for me, for the AP, certainly not for the selection committee. The thing for Penn State fans, though, is you're probably going to make the playoff, right, if you go 11-1. They'll probably put you in there as one of the 12 best teams in the sport. But this game was not about making the college football playoff. Hell, this game really wasn't even about making the Big Ten championship, although a win probably gets you closer to that than not. It was about demonstrating to the fan base and to college football as a whole that Penn State is ready to compete for national championships, and we ain't seen that from them, man. Like, it's really disheartening because Penn State's at that Oklahoma plateau, right, where you can get there. Not even Oklahoma plateau, because Oklahoma will win the Big 12 championship now and again before making the college football playoff. But you're at this plateau where we know you're going to win 9-10 games with James Franklin as your head coach. Book it. Doesn't matter that your schedule doesn't really have anybody on it. Your best win to date is still Illinois. We want to believe that we are means something. And in these games, it just hasn't. In a year where you don't play Ohio State and Michigan, and you get Ohio State at home, it has to fall into place for you. It has to. Otherwise, what are we talking about with Penn State except filling out a bracket? And I don't necessarily want to see Penn State not in the playoff, but I don't want them to be there as a placeholder to fill out a bracket for a team like, say, Ole Miss, we'll talk about a little bit later on, put something on paper, or Miami, who feels like a soft number 5, but then they go down 28-17, they come back and they win that game in really great fashion. We'll talk about them a little bit later on. I learned a lot more about Quinshon Judkins, and that, along with Caleb Downs, ends up being your 2 best portal pulls, period, this cycle, man. Like, Caleb Downs, you heard Joel Klatt compare him to Troy Polamalu, which is very high praise, but, I mean, the dude had 107 tackles as a true freshman and was a starter at Alabama for Nick Saban his last year. Yeah, he might actually be better than Troy Polamalu when it's all said and done. Quinshon Judkins, who had a lot of tread on those tires still left, comes in, and he is your gotta-have-it guy. He's making tremendous plays, running through people, making big blocks, 14 rushes for 95 yards. I think Quinshon Judkins is the guy that many of us wanted Travion Henderson to become. And Travion Henderson's a great player and a home run hitter. But in money downs, when you gotta have it behind an offensive line that is down basically 2 starters, you're going to Quinshon Judkins. I mean, you slide Donovan Jackson from left guard to left tackle because, well, you've seen enough of Mikowski and you don't like it. However, there were these places where I'm going, wait, that's Donovan Jackson head up against Abdul Carter. That's a guard. Like, guards don't do that, dog. Like, guards guard the basket. You know what I'm saying? Guards do not come out to the top of the key and guard the point guard, as Joel was pointing out. Like, it's when you get that much space you got to cover, it gets real difficult when these dudes are fast and they are timing you up and they're just turning the corner on you. But you know what? He showed up. You know, he's playing position because they need him to do it or they're not going to have an opportunity to win. That was impressive. You got 177 rush yards out of a patchwork offensive line. That is impressive. You got playmaking out of Cody Simon. You got playmaking out of Davison Igbinosun. You got playmaking out of Denzel Burke, who people are, you know, I'm hard on him, but when you call yourself the best corner in college football, I expect you to purport yourself like the best corner in college football. I'm not at all taken aback by what we saw from Penn State. All I can say is I don't know where you go from here. Like, that defense is good. They've had back-to-back pick sixes, which is free money if you're the offense, right? They've given you 6 points. And you can't do much at all with that. That's terrible. If you're Tom Allen, you're that defense, you're watching guys like Kobe King hang it all out for you. You're watching guys like Tyler Tracy go get it for you. Like, I felt really bad for that defense because they deserve a better offense. But I can say that about a number of teams this year, Oklahoma being at the top of the list. By the way, Oklahoma got a win. East Maine put up 665 yards of offense. We'll talk about them a little bit later on, but that's an example of what I'm talking about here. I can't have my quarterback going 12 of 20 for 146 with a pick and no TDs against Ohio State when we're the number 3 team in the country. I can't have losses when I know that I got an easy 6 from my defense. I can't have that. I have to have those folks who know that this gift is not going to be there all the time. I know it's a day game, and I know how much people don't really like those with these top 5 matchups, but this one lived up to the hype, man. Like, at one point, I'm like, is Ohio State going to dig themselves out of this? And they did. They dug themselves out of a 10-point deficit, and they won the game by 7. They had a tremendous third quarter that we need to go and study, because we know that Penn State and Ohio State had been outstanding in the third quarter against opponents, right? But one of those came out the gate and got 3 points on the board. So it becomes 17, right, to 13. And then it's attrition, right? It's, can you go get field goals at the end of, well, drives where you're supposed to be getting touchdowns? That is what Ohio State was able to do. Penn State goes for it. I think that was the right call to make. I think that you got to find a way to get Tyler Warren open, and that is on Andy Kotelnicki, you ask me. I'm also thinking that Chip Kelly's just going to keep running the football in ways that not all of us are on board with. I kind of want to see him put those 4 wide receivers out there and make them your focal point, but it worked for them. Jeremiah Smith did not have a vintage game, but he had a good game. 4 catches, 55 yards to lead all receivers. Brandon Ennis had, I thought, pretty good game. He didn't fumble a punt that he was supposed to catch, a muffle punt. He had 2 catches for 33 yards. Jelani Thurman had the bobble and Featherstones catch. I really like that for him. And Emeka Egbuka turns out to still be Emeka Egbuka, man. 3 catches, 31 yards, and a TD. That dude needs to get drafted in the first round. I don't know who would take him and why, because he does a little bit of everything. So I don't know where he fits in the NFL. I just know that he does, and I know that he's first-round talent. Reminds me a lot of Laviska Shenault, for folks that remember that dude at Colorado. Like, Emeka can do anything you want him to do. Where Jeremiah is going to be that guy that is just taking the top off the defense and going to Megatron some plays that other guys, mere mortals, would not be able to play. Outstanding win for Ohio State, 20-13. They now have a loss to the number 1 team in the country and a win against the number 3 team in the country. That's probably going to vault them into the number 2 spot in the College Football Playoff Selection Committee rankings. But we'll see. And the reason I say that is Georgia's got the best win, right? They go on the road at night at Texas. They beat the number 2 team in the country, and they vault themselves back into this, right? I'm also looking at this going, okay, you lost to Alabama. Alabama lost to Vanderbilt. Alabama lost to Tennessee. So if we're talking about losses and what they mean, you're going to put Ohio State there on strength of who they've beaten and who they lost to. We'll take a look at strength of schedule all the way down, but, the Big Ten has not been as strong as the SEC. So I would not be shocked to find out that it's Georgia behind Ohio State, that 3 spot, with Oregon that 1 spot. It really feels like right now, if things continue as they are, the Big Ten is going to get the number 1 seed in the College Football Playoff Selection Committee's final rankings, because check this out. Indiana's still undefeated. They got Michigan State. We expect them to beat Michigan State. They could be undefeated by the time they play Ohio State. Ohio State beats an Indiana that's going to be a top 10 team by then, if not top 5. They're going to go in that thing against Oregon, knowing that one of those 2 teams who we think is going to be undefeated, is Oregon's got a down Michigan today. They're going to be playing for the 1 seed, and both of those teams probably going to get in. Same thing is true if Indiana manages to upset Ohio State at the shoe, which would be tremendous, but I just don't see that happening. The one thing that I want to leave Ohio State fans with on this is you still haven't played a complete game of football from a team that we know was built not to win the national championship, but to win it in style. Like, this roster, top down, it's there. You're supposed to run over people on the way to being dominant, right? I don't think it is hyperbole to say you tried to put together a team that could not just win this thing, but be rival teams as one of the great teams of all time, given the talent that is on it, given what you went to go get. Is Will Howard going to be the guy that gets you there or doesn't get you there? It's looking that way, right? It's looking like quarterback is really going to have more to say about Ohio State's season than any other position, which feels kind of, because you know what they have everywhere else. But if Will Howard's going to throw pick sixes in games that you can win, how much better would you be if he played a perfect football game? And he has been really good. He's been one of the most efficient passers in the sport. And I love this stat from True Media. He and Dylan Gabriel throw to wide open targets more than anybody else in the sport. They are throwing to guys that are butt naked open 44 and 42% of the time, which means your offensive play caller, Chip Kelly, Will Stein, are doing outstanding jobs of getting you clean looks, kind of like Brock Purdy with Kyle Shanahan with the Niners last year, not necessarily this year. If they're butt naked open, you should be able to complete passes. That's the problem. And I think that is what Ohio State fans are keying on. It's like, this isn't as sharp as it should be, given what we have seen from these wide receivers out in patterns. You need to be better, but you can still get there. There's still a measure. There's I'm a Formula One fan, I race myself. There's time on the track. Like there's lap time out there for Ohio State to go get, right? You are not close to peaking. You're not close to being as good as you possibly can be. And you weren't close to being as good as you possibly could be against Oregon. You lost that game by 1 point. Will Howard slides when he probably shouldn't have, and it was on the road. This game is basically going to be in your second home if you get to play Oregon again at Lucas Oil in Indianapolis, right? That's a neutral site. You know what you're doing there. You just got to take care of business the rest of the way. So that is Ohio State getting a 20-13 victory against Penn State. Game that I want to talk about because we put it in the headline with the instant reaction. Again, if you are new to the channel, please consider subscribing. We're at 115,000 subscribers, very close to 116,000 subscribers. It would be great if you were one of us, so just click that subscribe button if you're here. I thought that Arkansas was going to turn Arkansas-Ole Miss into a really great game, and there was some history to show Arkansas could win this football game. Arkansas had shown enough in recent years to be recent games, be talented enough to give Ole Miss a handful. They gave Texas A&M a handful. They were able to beat Tennessee. They gave LSU a handful, and they played really well against Mississippi State, a Mississippi State that is the worst team. Auburn's the worst team. The second worst team in the Big 12 this year, in the SEC this year. But in this game, it got out of hand real fast for Arkansas. Some of this is Taylor Green's fault. As talented as that guy is, man, there were moments when I'm going, sit down somewhere, stop running, slide, or the way in which he doesn't necessarily see it the way that Bobby Petrino has it in his mind. And then when you can't run the football because there's no Jaquanian Jackson in this game, I get how y'all feel about the tailbacks in general, but you can't turn Taylor Green into your running attack. And then he got hurt early and came back in the game. But by the time we're talking about this, man, it's over. Do you realize Ole Miss scored 28 points in 1 quarter of football? Like in 1 quarter? If for those of y'all didn't watch the game, it fell apart real quick because it was 7-3 after the first quarter, but it always felt like it was going to be, either Ole Miss is going to poop the bed or Arkansas is going to find a way to catch fire, but that's not what happened. What happened was Ole Miss caught fire, and they were playing like they were mad in this game. And if Ole Miss continues to play like they are mad, you're going to get Jackson Dart being gaudy. 25-31 for 515 yards with 6 TDs. Say that again. 25 of 31 for 515 passing yards with 6 passing TDs. Okay? There is no Trey Harris in this game, who up until this point had been the most productive wide receiver in the SEC. Jackson Dart said, it's cool. I still got my homie Watkins over here, who goes 8 catches for 254 yards with 5 TDs. Just eating up Travis Williams' secondary. And it got out of hand in such a way that I thought maybe Lane Kiffin was going to take his foot off, and then Arkansas would go score, right? And when Arkansas would go score and it looked like a 3-score game, Ole Miss was like, cool, we get more opportunities to put the ones out here and go to work on y'all and stay on your head at Reynolds. Quite literally the most embarrassing loss that they've had this year, and it's not close. And I realize that's not saying as much as you think, but this was an Ole Miss team that has its back against the wall. This is an Ole Miss team that is staring at a collective who's paying out $10 million to players and going, we expect to make the playoff. What Penn State expects to do, what we're telling Penn State they can do with this loss to Ohio State. Ole Miss had built for this run, not unlike Ohio State had tried to build for a really great national championship run. They had built for the run to be, we're getting into the playoff this year. We're making history. That's what it is. We're going to do this at Ole Miss. So they shell out this money to go get this defensive line that is outstanding. They shell out this money to keep Jackson Dart happy. They shell out this money to keep Trey Harris happy. And then they add guys to an already really exciting and phenomenal team. And they drop 2. You know, like after the Kentucky loss, you got Lane Kiffin in there going, I don't know how we lost this game. And then you lose to LSU. And then you're up against it, right? Because I don't think they're going to make the SEC championship game. But you're going to need to stack wins. And you're going to need to stack wins with style points the rest of the way to give the playoff committee at least something to think about. Because if you have to choose between Penn State and Ole Miss, and you go by record, probably going to go with Penn State. But if you got to choose between Ole Miss and Penn State, and you look at how they played each other last year in a bowl game where Ole Miss beat Penn State like a drum, you want that to be fresh in people's minds. And the way to do it is drop 63 on an Arkansas team that knocked off number 4 Tennessee in the same spot. Okay? Like that's what it's going to be. I am impressed. I am. Because Sam Pittman had a great line going into this one. He's like, hey, we don't have as much money as people think we do to go spend it on name, image, and likeness for players. And he said, look, we had to go get some blue light specials on our defensive line, and they went and got some Louis Vuitton for theirs. And when you look at what he got out of the transfer portal, San Jose State, what's standing, players from those sorts of programs, and you look at where Ole Miss went shopping, right? You talk about Walter Nolan from A&M. You talk Uman Millen at Florida. Jared Ivey's out there. Suntaran Perkins is out there. You understand. You get it, right? When you got better players, you got better players. And Arkansas got a great stop, goal line stop, gets the ball back to Taylor Green. I'm thinking, first play I see for Taylor Green, they're throwing a pass play on the 1 yard line. I'm going, Bobby, don't do that to this man. Come back, that boy take the safety, and we're off and running, and the game's over, right? I'm watching it because I said I was going to talk about it here, but I'm also watching it because Arkansas fans show up for the show. They enjoy the show. They enjoy me talking about the squad. And I try to keep it real for them. But Jordan Watkins is on your head, dog. 254 yards, 8 catches, 5 TDs. Jackson Dart was on your head. And he was yelling on the sideline. He was cussing on the sideline. The last time that Ole Miss went into Arkansas, Matt Corral, who finished as a Heisman finalist in 2021, by the way, top 10, he threw 6 picks. Jackson Dart, that ain't going to be me. I'm going to throw 6 TDs in the same spot where Matt Corral threw 6 picks, and we come in with a W. And that's exactly what they did, man. 63-31, they got this one. We're also looking at an SEC that gets to be a little bit more interesting with Ole Miss in these 2 losses because South Carolina has shown itself capable of beating a team like the one they're going to play today in Texas A&M. They've also shown themselves capable of losing to a team like the one they're going to face Texas A&M. It feels like they can beat everybody on their schedule and they can lose to everybody on their schedule because they probably shouldn't have beaten Alabama, right? They probably should have beaten, well, they did beat the hell out of Oklahoma. I wouldn't be shocked is what I'm saying to see them beat A&M. A&M is the last undefeated team in SEC play. And that's why I'm bringing them up with Ole Miss because Ole Miss has got to be rooting for South Carolina, for South Carolina in this one. But that's also because, right, they want to get back to some measure of ahead of South Carolina. They want to be on their heads because we got this new rule that came from Greg Sankey and the SEC on Friday saying, look, Ole Miss in parentheses, me putting that there. If we see you faking injuries and you can't provide any data to our national coordinators about what the injury was, like you can't give us a doctor's note, we're fining the head coach $50,000. Do it again, we're fining him $100,000. You do it a third time, we're spending him for the next game. Shane Beamer put everybody on game with this. It's like, hey, it's kind of funny how many times Ole Miss's defense goes down when the opposing offense picks up a first down or an explosive play and wants to go fast. And then Ole Miss need to issue the statement. And we all hate it. And I did a segment on it because it sucks. And I'm sure that got back to Ole Miss. And Ole Miss had the opportunity to say, look, they don't like us. They don't like us. They don't want us to be any good. I'm watching Lane Kiffin throw footballs down the sideline and discuss Arkansas. I'm like, come on, man, be a little bit less of that. But he's not, right? He's going to be Lane Kiffin the whole way. I think they got a shot here, right? They go out the rest of the way, and they take care of business. Their schedule at Ole Miss, they're sitting at 7-2. They have left Georgia, right? Florida, and Mississippi State. So you beat Georgia. That makes this very interesting. I don't know that they're gonna. Right? I don't know. It depends on which Georgia team we see. because the Georgia team that I expect to see is the one that played against Texas. But that Georgia team had a quarterback threw 3 interceptions, 175 pass yards. Yeah, I need to see how Georgia looks against a Florida team that feels middling. It's on right now as we're talking. But look, I'm also kind of I want to see what that game looks like, because now you put yourself in a good spot. You beat Arkansas like they stole something. You're on a 2-game winning streak going to Georgia, and that game is going to be 2:30 at the Grove. So you got a shot there. Last game we need to talk about before we get to these afternoon slate games, we'll do a little bit later on with the show, is Miami-Duke. Miami out here playing with matches, and apparently that's just what Miami's going to be doing. Miami's going to be that team that's just, they're going to play with fire, and we keep waiting on them to get burned, and they never get burned. It doesn't happen for them. They find a way to come back and go get a victory. I was astounded at just how it felt like this game went away from Duke, because Duke had the lead at 21-17 halftime. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe Malik Murphy has figured out something with Jonathan Brewer, the offensive coordinator at Duke in the Manny Diaz Bowl. For those of y'all that don't know, Manny Diaz was head coach at Miami. They parted ways. Mario Cristobal got the job. But my favorite fact about Manny Diaz being head coach at Miami is that his daddy was once the mayor of Miami. And I was like, well, that's a perfect place for you to be. And then he wasn't. So you get this game that's 21-17 at half. And then basically Cam Ward decides to put on the superhuman juice. He goes 25-41, 5 TDs, 400 yards passing in this game. But Xavier Restrepo went to number 1 in receiving yards and receptions at Miami in this game. He had 8 for 146, 3 TDs. Outstanding game from him. And it's not as if Malik Murphy played bad. He just didn't play well. He went 25-41 like Cam Ward for 325 with 3 TDs. Difference is Cam Ward threw 5 TDs and a pick. Malik Murphy went 3 TDs and 3 interceptions. That's just not going to get it done. Even as you got an outstanding game from Samir Hagans, who threw up the hooks at the after his first touchdown, only touchdown. 9 catches, 139 yards for him. Damian Martinez was mostly held in check by that defense. Thought that was really great. 11 rushes for 66 yards for him. But giving up 36 points in the second half. If you're Duke, you can't. How do you justify that? You lose this game 53-31. Meanwhile, Miami gets to stay in the top 5. They might end up being in the top 4 based on what has happened to Penn State and what we think about Georgia later on. And with teams being idle like Notre Dame, right? We'll find out just what the select committee thinks of Miami, because I got a hard time slotting Miami. Like, I don't think that they are 2022 Texas Christian, even though they keep playing with fire, because they look a little bit more talented than that. I think of 2022 Texas Christian being a lot like BYU or Iowa State this year. They're really playing above themselves, meaning we didn't expect them to be good this year. We didn't expect Iowa State to have an opportunity to move to 8-0 for the first time in school history, or Indiana to be able to move to 9-0 for just the third time in school history, or BYU being 9-0 we think, or 8-0 we think, for the first time since 1990, right? Second time since 1990, excuse me. Zach Wilson's COVID year was outstanding, and we should not forget that. Any place, anywhere, anybody. I get it. Miami, though, occupies this space where there were a handful of people, I was not one of them, who thought that Miami was going to be a top 10 team by the end of this. Top 25, sure. I could talk into that easy. I know who Cam Ward is. I know who Xavier Restrepo is. And I think Shannon Dawson might end up winning the Broyles Award, given what this offense has been able to do with Cam Ward in it. I just didn't think that they'd be able to run through this schedule the way they've been able to, and frankly been down a bunch. Like, they're down against Cal on the road. They come back to win that game. The double-digit deficit just doesn't phase this team. And that's a really great tool to have if you got it. But it's not one you want to keep using. It's one you want to be able to pull out every now and again. And Duke is a good football team. They dropped to 6-3, but, they were 6-2 coming into this. I don't know that this Miami team can do this against Clemson, but I hope we get an opportunity to see that. But Southern Methodist and Pittsburgh going to have to figure out if they get a chance. Southern Methodist Pittsburgh is the late game tonight. It's low-key good. It's on the ACC network, so get there if you can. I'm going to be watching it because I'll rank teams, right? But Southern Methodist is undefeated in ACC play, and Pittsburgh is undefeated, period. And I think this is going to be a really good gauge of just which one of those programs is for real. And we're going to have some figuring to do. Pittsburgh's got a tough road to get to the ACC title game, and we expect SMU, if they get past, they're going to have an opportunity to do that too. Again, Clemson, their only loss is to Georgia, and Georgia beat them 34-3. Since then, the Clemson offense has not only found its momentum, it has looked like one of the best offenses in football. Again, the ACC has become extremely fascinating, as has the Big 12, because you got BYU, you got Iowa State, you got Kansas State, and you got Colorado, right? Those feel like the teams that are going to be up for this thing, right? We'll see what Texas Tech can muster a little bit later on today. I'm looking at it, man. I think it's going to be on. Also, Vanderbilt looks like they're going to hold on 17-7 against Auburn, which at this point you got to be looking at, okay, who else could we get to be a head coach at Auburn, because it ain't working with the Hugh Freeze era. It's just not. It's not going to be. It's not. Haven't been any fun. On the way out here, right quick, Oklahoma gets the win against Maine. It was 7-7 at one point, and I'm watching this game on the ESPN Plus, and I'm going, I only see fire. But Oklahoma ends up getting the 665 yards of offense, 203 yards rushing from Javonte Barnes. I was looking for a 300-yard passing game from Jackson Arnold. Still can't get one of those, apparently. We don't do that no more. We just going to be running the football, playing defense. But getting to 5-4 means bowl eligibility is very much on the menu. Probably can beat that Missouri team. I'm not so sure about Bama and LSU, but we'll find out, right? So get to that 6th win against Missouri, and then we'll see. But I'll have more to say about Oklahoma and Maine, because Maine, please collect your money and don't put money in the bag. Like, let us get this win in. They were like, yeah, cool. You're going to stomp a mud hole in us and walk it dry. It's fine. If you like the show, please remember to subscribe to the channel. We upload every single day. We do live shows after big games on Saturdays, like Ohio State, Penn State today. And we do shows on Sunday evenings, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll do shows after the selection committee puts out its rankings on Tuesdays for the rest of the season. This is a season unlike any other we have seen. We're seeing first, going to see a 12-team playoff. We have Power 4, now Power 5. Army is still undefeated, even though they didn't have Bryson Daly. Lot to discuss on the rest of the after the afternoon slate and into the night. But that is going to do it for this particular episode of the #1 college football show. And I will see y'all a little bit later on. Deuces.